I actually have never given this specific talk before, so I'm really, really curious to hear your feedback after this, so please let me know if it was helpful. And I'm going to get to... Great! Thank you. Okay. So I am here to talk about building a community team. How many of you guys are community team members right now? And how many of you are looking into building community teams for the first time? Okay, awesome, perfect. So, make sure sound is going okay here. One of the questions that I really wanted to address, there's a couple things actually. I want us to think about what makes for a really great community hire. I want us to think about how does community evolve over time inside of your company. Those are things that are really hard to predict, but as much as possible, you want to plan for it. And then finally, I think why we're all here today is to really think about what is the future of community as a discipline, as an industry, and what are we doing inside of our companies to really move that forward. So, all right, what makes for a great community professional? I thought I'd start by sharing a little bit about a community professional. Hello, my name is Cindy, and I am a community professional. And I made a totally scientifically accurate pie chart and analyzing what really comprises a community professional in my case. And this kind of gets to some of the stuff that David was talking about. Some of us really intentionally moved into this role, and some of us kind of fell into it. So my background, a few years ago, I was finishing up my PhD in English literature. Obviously a prerequisite for becoming a community professional. And as part of that, I actually spent a lot of time teaching. And that experience and that background actually has come into play a lot in my role and in how I think about community and how Kickstarter really thinks about community. We are shepherds of all the people who come to our site, who want to make things, who want to learn how to use our site. And in many ways, that experience has come into play in ways that I really didn't necessarily expect. I also spent a lot of time writing before I came to Kickstarter. I was doing that thing where you come to New York and you're like, I'm going to be a writer, and no one will pay you for it. But you spend a lot of time practicing. You spend a lot of time figuring out how to tell a good story, and that's come into play a lot too. I also waited tables, and let me tell you, wait, how many of you guys have done food service? Yes, right? When I see food service on that resume, I'm like, you know. You understand what this is. And it's so key. Hospitality, in many ways, to me, is the original community, right? It's about walking up to that customer, helping them understand, helping them get what they need, and making sure that they're happy when you walk away. And so in many ways, that experience was also all about teaching humility and patience, things that you really need. And then finally, I could not include the fact that I spent a lot of time worrying, because when you come out of grad school with that PhD and you're waiting tables and you're writing, there's a lot of anxiety around that. It's very unclear, what on earth am I supposed to be doing? And so that, my friends, is a little bit of background as to where this community professional came from. But really, I want to talk about my team. I want to talk about the people at Kickstarter who work in community and where they come from. So to start, I wanted to show you a little bit about how we've grown over the years. The Kickstarter community team back in 2009 was 2 people, our co-founder Yancy Strickler and the first community hire, a woman named Cassie Marquez. And since then, we've grown to a team of 30, which, depending on the size of your organization, can seem very small or very big. But Kickstarter is about 82 people right now, so 30 out of 82 is actually a significant number of people devoted to working in community. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense, because community is what drives our platform. It is about creators, it is about backers, and it is about bringing all these people together to make something. So who is Kickstarter's community team? Right here we have a photo of Carol, who's our copywriter, and Megan, who is on our community support team, who also helps moderate our site. They're wearing matching cat snuggies. That came from a Kickstarter project, obviously. So I did, again, some more scientific research and analyzed some of the backgrounds of my team. And this is what we found. A full 30% of the team has a background in literature. So I decided that that clearly means that English majors are clearly the best community professionals out there. You might want to check the science behind that. Some people might think that this is confirmation bias, what have you. But I think the fact the truth is right here. But in addition, you'll see that the team really comes from all sorts of backgrounds: communication, psychology, law. We even have people who invented their own majors. Apparently you can do that. It's amazing. And a couple of people who dropped out. And again, I think that that diversity of experience is very much indicative of where our field is right now. We are coming from all over the place, and we're all kind of united by this desire to help, to bring people together, to really engage and build community. So I also asked the team, hey, what sorts of things did you guys do that really helped you prepare for this world of community? And so they shared some of the experiences that they've had beyond school, things like founding companies, coaching chess, waiting tables, playing roller derby, all of these things that, again, I think comprise giving you that background and experience and point of view that's really essential for working in community. And one of my favorites is that our support lead, a woman named Catherine Pan, actually in her application included a thesis that she had written entitled Good Bush, Bad Bush, which I will show you the first page of now. So obviously we hired her instantly. Okay, so after interviewing many people over the years, I tried to figure out, like, what am I really looking for when I'm building this team, when I'm growing and I'm trying to find a great community professional. And I tried to boil it down into the essence. And the first thing is you want to have someone who is an outstanding writer and communicator. And I feel like when you look at job postings today, number 1 or number 2 is always that thing, right? Everyone's like, be a great writer, be a great communicator. But what does that really mean? And to me, it means you do not compromise on this specific skill, specifically when you work in community, because you want to be articulate not only in person, but online. And so the way that we seek that out is that we do request writing samples. We actually do ask everyone to complete a test when they apply for the community team at Kickstarter, because we want to make sure that that shining personality that you have in person also translates in writing. So important. And little things like a typo, that's a deal breaker for me, actually. It's really important to us, and that's something that we do not compromise on. So you have to be outstanding writer, outstanding communicator. Now these next set of things are kind of the sort of thing that you have to feel out in an interview, right? We're looking for someone that has humility. And I think Tina actually mentioned some of this in talking about the volunteers. Knowing that ego really has no place in the world of community. It is about them. It's not about you. And I think when you meet a great community person, you feel that implicitly in them. You realize that they're there because they care about the people, and they really want to help them in some way. And obviously key to that is empathy. The ability to really put yourself in someone else's shoes, to be incredibly patient, to be able to know that no matter how many support tickets you've answered, no matter phones you've picked up, at the end of the day, there's a real human being at the other end of the line, and they need your support. So we really look for that quality. And then finally, adaptability. Community, I can guarantee, is going to be the one team in your company that changes the most. I think every other team kind of has a sense of, like, this is our roadmap, this is how things are going to go. But our field is really new, and so it's going to evolve, and it's going to change a lot. And that means that you need folks who are really able to adapt, who are able to roll with some of those changes, to be able to say, all right, I might have started doing this, but I'm going to be doing something totally different 6 months from now. This is another one that I think is really important. Intellectual curiosity and creativity. Those are two things that, obviously Kickstarter is a company that is about creative people. So we really are interested in folks that are part of that understand it, that sort of live and breathe that. But I think no matter what your company or product is, that's really important. We want someone who approaches community not just as a job, not just a task, but something that they really think about at a much higher level. And I have a little anecdote about this. So when I was a teacher, I taught writing, and I taught a lot of students. I'd say every semester I had about 30 or 40 students in a seminar. And I would say about 29 out of those 30 students would come in and they'd say, all right, what do I have to do to get an A? What do I have to do to get a B? What do I have to do to just barely pass? Those are the ways in which they were approaching the question of this course. But there was usually 1 or 2 people who would come to me and they'd say, I want to be a writer. What do I have to do to become a writer? And I think it's the same for community. You want that person who comes in saying, hey, I want to know what it means and what I can do to really help build this community and be a part of that. It's important. Okay, so this one I contemplated. I'm like, is this essential? Is this core? And I really believe it actually is. Because if you work in community, you're dealing with lots of people, and people are weird. People do very strange things. And you've got to be able to roll with that. And I think, community teams inside of companies are usually the most fun team. You're usually ones that are laughing the most, the ones who are kind of going out and having lunch and talking about the very strange things that you've seen. And that is just a big part of this. And I think being able to embrace that and laugh about it is super, super important. And then number 5, you want to be a part of your community. You're going to have a lot of people who come to you who maybe are your super users, your super fans. And that's not necessarily what I mean by part of your community. I actually mean someone who is sort of the audience for your product, someone who understands, again, intimately and deeply what it is that you're trying to do. So for us at Kickstarter, we want someone who really understands the creative process, who knows why it's important that people come together to make things, and who understands what the rewards of that are, but also what the challenges of that are. So the next thing I'm going to show you is another member of my team, a woman named Natalie, who recently launched a Kickstarter project, which was successful, and I wanted to share with you her video for that. Well, I will narrate what's happening right now. Natalie is making a web series about pizza, but not only is it about making pizza, it's also about pizza dancing. And so the first episode, she's kind of giving you a highlight of what that will be. And the pizza dancing, of course, is inspired by the act of making pizza. So this is sort of what I mean by really embracing that creative process.
What song is playing?
It's a song that I believe she custom wrote just for this video. It's amazing. I will send you guys a link later because you got to watch with the sound. It's incredible. So yeah, I mean, I think that, again, Natalie's on our community support team, and everyone on that team is either thinking about our project or thinking about something that they can do. And a big part of that is because we want everyone to understand what it feels like to be a creator. And so being part of our community team, that is a core value. That's something that we work on together. Okay, so this is the hard part, right? How is your community team going to evolve over time? You don't have a time machine, so you can't predict it. And let me tell you, over the last 4 years of doing this, I always would look ahead and I'm like, all right, I got this figured out. And then 3 months from now, I'm like, no, I totally don't. I totally messed that up. And that's just gonna happen. So I'll give you a sense of sort of how our team evolved, and maybe that will help you guys. Okay, so when the community team first kind of started at Kickstarter, we were doing everything. We were doing editorial and communications and PR. We were doing events, outreach, education. We were the people who ordered Fresh Direct. We went out and bought more toilet paper when we ran out. It's sort of a mix of all of these things. But of course, as Kickstarter's community got bigger, as the company got bigger, we really had to start and split apart some of these things so that we could function more competently as a company and do a better job of serving our users. So in the next evolution, community became much more focused. We really decided that, all right, we're going to be all about community support, about community engagement, and of course this new and burgeoning area, trust and safety. I don't know how many of you guys have those teams yet. Yeah. But if you work in trust and safety, you're also sort of in a similar boat where it's like, this is brand new. What are we doing? How do we do this? So right now, all of that is a part of community at Kickstarter. But it doesn't stop there. As we continue evolving, these things are going to keep growing and changing. We're going to pull it apart and put it back together. So now we're looking at a community operations group that handles support and trust and safety. things like payments. We're also building out that community engagement team and bringing back a focus on events and education. And then we also have a new team that's built around content and policy. If you work with a big platform, if you have millions of users, policy is actually a huge part of that. And that's something that, just this year we've really identified as a team that we really need. If I could go back in time, it's something that I would have started earlier. So again, this is some of the ways in which we're evolving. And finally, 6 months from now, I don't actually know exactly what it's going to look like. And that, again, is sort of a part of what this industry is going through. And I think the more that we talk about this, the more that we share it with each other, the more that we can kind of make sure that we're all doing this in the best possible and the smartest way. All right, so what is the future of community at your company? And this is where I dispense very sagely advice, so take notes. I do think that it's really, really important for us to be the advocates for community internally and externally, right? This is a discipline and a practice. I think in many ways, and other speakers have mentioned this as well, when you think about community, it's like, oh, it's this hodgepodge of things, anyone can do it. But I don't actually believe that. I don't think that anyone can do it really, really well. And that's what we're looking for. We want to set the standard and the best practices around what makes this a discipline. This may not be a degree program that you can go through, but there are clear things that we know are super important to being a community professional and working in this industry. And the more that we can articulate that, the more that we can establish that through forums like this and other places, the more that we can kind of move our entire industry forward and make it clear that when you start a company, you want to start with a community team. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be something that you're thinking about from the very beginning. I also think that community is a core value, right? When you walk into a company and you see that they have a community team, they're saying something. They're saying that we're not just conducting transactions with customers. We're here to serve a group of people that we care about and that we think we want to bring value to in some way. And that, again, I think is a commitment and it's a core value. It's expressing that we want to do something beyond just making sales numbers or hitting some sort of bottom line. And to me, something that I've been thinking a lot about is how to measure success, right? That's so hard when you're like, well, all these people came together, that seems cool. And that is wonderful. But to me, what's great is that, if you were to take yourself out of that equation, take your company, your product out of that equation, if that community is still going, I think you've been really successful. And I think that's the hallmark of a really great community. And that's how you know that you've done the right thing. And finally, obviously, community is still in flux. I think all of us bear that in mind as that's a dance party that's happening in the office. As we kind of think ahead and know that the stuff that we learned today, the stuff that we share with each other now, is going to help inform the future. And I think next year when this conference happens again, or in however many months, we're going to have even more knowledge to work from. And so I leave you with this, my last slide here. So the office, our office, plays D&D. How many are familiar with D&D? Whoa, yeah, all right, talk. And this is largely led by Luke Crane, who's one of my community managers, and also an RPG designer. And he's an amazing dungeon master. But the team gets together and they play D&D and they role play. And I thought this was kind of a nice way to end this talk, which is on this note. Oh, there's no sound. Nicole is about to roll a 20. Woo! Great success. This is all in your hands. We can do this. Thank you guys so much.